I'm Sean Bose, concert visual designer in Los Angeles, California, and this is the next installment of my Resolume Quick Start tutorial series. In this video, we're going to be talking about setting up controls inside of your Resolume show file. By the end of this video, you'll have a basic understanding of how to set up controls inside your show file so that you can start experimenting and exploring. There is no one right way to do this, but this will show you a few of the options available. The techniques in this video apply to pretty much any controller you might have access to, but if you don't have a MIDI controller, that's okay, because we're going to start with a controller that you already have. I'm talking about the mouse and keyboard. The mouse and keyboard, I would say, are under-celebrated tools in the VJ arsenal. For one, you already have them, and they have quite a bit of versatility. In fact, I use the mouse as my primary content selection tool, as well as for making other little tweaks in my show file during the show. And the keyboard, I mean, it's got a bunch of buttons. It's probably attached to your laptop already, so you can't forget it. And pretty cool. The only drawback is, you don't have knobs and sliders and other fun things like that, but it's a great place to start. So let's jump into Resolume and start mapping some controls so we can see how this all works. All right, so we are inside of Resolume and let's map a few keyboard keys to different functions. To do so, we're going to go in our shortcuts menu, and you'll see we have a few different options: edit keyboard, MIDI, OSC, and DMX. To edit the keyboard commands, we're just going to go into edit keyboard. And you'll see that a bunch of the UI elements are now highlighted. That means that we can map a keyboard key to any of these different functions. There's clips, layers, layer opacity, BPM, different effects, all kinds of things. So let's try that out. Maybe our layer 1 select, we want to map to maybe our number key. So we'll click on it and then just click the button, number 1. And you'll see it pops up in our shortcuts panel in this little list. We have composition layer 1 select, map to numpad 1. And we can keep going. We just click on another element, layer 2, click the number 2 on our keyboard, and now they're connected. It's added to the list. Layer 3 is 3. That's awesome. To get out of the mapping mode, we just go to shortcuts and stop. And now all the highlighting goes away and we're back into regular Resolume mode. But now if we click different number keys, 3, 2, 1, we're selecting different layers. Pretty sweet. But let's add a little bit more functionality. Maybe we want to be able to select, trigger some clips with our keyboard as well. So let's go back, shortcuts, edit keyboard. Let's click on a clip and attach it to a key, maybe the A key. We'll just keep in our little like home row mode over here. And A, click the next clip, S, D, F. If we go to shortcuts and stop, now when we click A, S, D, and F, we're triggering different clips in this layer. Now when we're doing this, there are actually a few different options that we can choose from that we might not have noticed before. So let's go back to shortcuts, edit keyboard. Let's click on this A key. And down in our shortcuts panel at the bottom, there's some options that pop up down here depending on what we're mapping. Right now, we just have this target, and there's a little drop down. It has 3 options: by position, this clip, and selected layer. And that's going to change the behavior of how this button works. Right now, it's in by position, which means whenever we click A, it's going to activate whatever is in this position, this column 1, layer 1 position. And the same with S and D and F. They're all going to do column 1, column 2, column 3, layer 1, that position only. If we want instead for it to do the column 1 position of whichever layer is selected, we can change it to selected layer. So now we go to our shortcuts and stop, we're in layer 1 at A, S, D, F. Works like that. If we select layer 2, A, S, D, F, A is now selecting layer 2 because we changed our A key option to selected layer. And if we go to layer 3, our A key will select the first position in layer 3. Now we didn't change the other ones, so those ones are still behaving as this position specifically, layer 1 and that column. So let's go back to shortcuts, edit the keyboard. Let's change it for all of them to selected layer, and you can see them jumping up into the layer that's selected because they're actually moving to the selected layer. So let's stop, and now we're on layer 3, A, S, D, F, layer 2, A, S, D, F, layer 1, A, S, D, F. There's a third option. So let's look at how that works. Edit the keyboard. Let's go to A again. And let's change it to the third option, this clip. This clip mode means our A key is going to be mapped specifically to this piece of content, Redform 4K01, that I have selected here and have mapped to letter A. So if I stop shortcuts, like it kind of looks like it's behaving the same way, but if I move this to any other position and I press the A key, this clip is being triggered, not this position. And even if I have layer 2 selected and I press A, this clip, wherever it is going to be triggered by A now because it's in this clip mode. My other ones are still functioning as selected layer mode, but A is always going to select this. So there's a few different options that you can choose so that you have the behavior that you want. Let's move that back and let's set these all back to selected layer. And you might have noticed I've been like dragging around our opacity with my mouse. That's kind of annoying. Maybe we want control over that too. That's a big part of VJing. So let's try that out. And you might think, hey, these are sliders. What am I going to attach that to? Well, you can attach them to buttons. Doesn't matter. Let's select this, and maybe we'll just use the row of numbers right above our layer selection. So we'll do that to 1, we'll do that to 2, we'll do, there we go. So 4, 5, and 6 is going to be our 1, 2, and 3 opacity. So let's stop. Now if we hit, let's get a clip going. If we hit the 4 key, we can toggle on and off that layer's opacity. 5 and 6 do the same. Oh yeah, baby. we VJing now. That's kind of, you know, maybe I don't like how that functions either. Having to press it once and then twice, like, you want to be a little more button mashy. Let's see what other options we have. We go to the keyboard and we click here. We can see down here there's actually more options now. And we can choose in our mode, it's a toggle, which is a button, which is how we want it to behave. But there's this checkbox piano, which makes it behave like maybe like a piano key, where if you click that, it's only going to function when I'm pressing it, and then when I take my finger off, it stops, kind of like a piano key. It makes sound when you press it, stops when you lift it up. So let's change that for all of these. And now you can see only when I'm pressing the key does the opacity go up. So now we can really be button mashy. Pretty sweet. And then we can, you know, queue up for the next track. Pretty sweet, dude. Freaking VJing right now, man. Cool. And we can do it for, you know, not only clips and things like that, but maybe we want some effects. We're going to want a strobe. So let's edit our keyboard. We can click our bypass button of our strobe and just slap that on the space bar, because we're going to be using that a lot. We want it to be obvious. We want it in piano mode, right? Let's see how that works. Stop. It's kind of working, but it's like backwards. Like when we press it, it turns on the bypass, which like turns the strobe off. So that's kind of annoying. So let's see if we can change that. And you'll notice in our options, there's actually an invert option. So if you ever run into this issue where it's like the functionality is just backwards, just click invert. And now when we press it, our strobe is functioning how we want. All right, ready for your dubstep set, dude. Let's go. So that's mapping keyboard shortcuts into Resolume, which is a super basic way that you can set up controls for functions inside of Resolume, even without a MIDI controller. But if you do have a MIDI controller, let's see how that works in this next section. All right, so I've got a MIDI controller set up here. We're going to turn it on and start mapping some things. But first, we want to make sure Resolume is seeing our MIDI controller. When you first plug in a MIDI controller, you're going to want to check under Arena Preferences, go to the MIDI section, and first of all, make sure that you see your device in the list. If you don't see your device, you can click this refresh button, make sure it's all powered on and plugged in, and it should show up. Then you want to make sure that MIDI input and MIDI output, if that's available, are checked so that Resolume sees the input and output, and we're sending signal back and forth. And you can verify this is working by untwirling this little triangle over here. That'll open up this monitor panel. And if you start pressing buttons and hitting sliders, you'll see the messages in the log here. So that's how we can verify everything's working great. So that's awesome. We can close that. Now let's map a couple of controls, and we're going to do this in a very similar way as we just did. We're going to go to the shortcuts menu. This time we'll select Edit MIDI, and you'll see in a very similar way everything is highlighted. And all these different UI elements in our composition are able to be mapped to our different buttons, sliders, and knobs. That's awesome. And the cool thing about using a MIDI controller is that, you know, it's kind of set up in a similar way as our software. So things kind of make sense. So we can say, you know, okay, we have a master opacity, kind of looks like a slider. Let's map it to this master opacity slider on our controller. And to do that, we just click and jiggle the control that we want to use, and it shows up in our list. Awesome. And, you know, maybe layer 1 we want to attach a slider to, so we'll click that and do the same thing. Just jiggle it, it shows up in the list. We'll do number 2, and we'll do number 3. So let's do the same thing. Let's stop our shortcuts and just verify that that's all working. So yeah, if we could see our master opacity going up and down with our slider, and we have all of our, and we could do the same thing with some of our effects as we did before. You know, we can edit MIDI, and we can say attach our strobe to a button and do piano mode and invert it. And now if we press this button, we have a strobe. Yep, and that's all you need. And the cool thing about MIDI controller is, you know, it lights up. We got a nice little button. It feels really good to press. And sometimes you can customize it a little bit. So we can go into, we can click here and check in our velocity status, right? Let's say it's currently on. We can change, you know, our color to, let's change it to pink. And then when it's off, we can change it to green. We can stop, and now our strobe is bypassed in pink, and when we press it, it turns green. So we always know what the status of all of our controls are, and we can color code them so we know where everything is. And yeah, it's really nice and easy like that. Something we haven't talked about yet is knobs. So let's actually map a knob to our overall speed, because this can be a fun thing to mess with. So let's try that out. Go to our shortcuts, we'll edit MIDI, we'll click on speed, and we'll just use this knob. We jiggle it and it shows up. Now we stop and we can slow it down and we can speed it up. And we have full control over our speed. But let's say, you know, we want default not to be stopped. We want it to be 1, which, like, it can be kind of hard to hit in a live environment, like when that's not the bottom. Like, maybe like 10 is too fast. Maybe we just want this to go from like 1 to like 4. But we want, you know, we want that to be easy. We don't want to have to like find that in the range. We can set that in the options. Let's check it out. Go to edit MIDI. Click on that. Make sure it's selected. And we have this this range over here that we can just edit. So we can change this from 0 to 1. And we can change this from 10 to 4. Now you can see our little range slider is restricted to that. And if we stop and jiggle this, now when we go all the way to the left, we're at 1. We go all the way to the right, we're at 4. So we can really customize like how we want all of these controls to function. If you have any questions so far about Resolume or mapping or VJing in general, drop them in the comments below and I'll try to help you out. Let's keep going. There's another option that we can do where we can use OSC to control Resolume as well. OSC is kind of like MIDI. It's like another type of control messages that you can send to Resolume. The cool thing about OSC is it can work over the network, so you can use an app on your phone to control Resolume and build custom controllers using apps like Touch OSC. Let's take a look at how that works. So if you got this Touch OSC app on my phone, and let's go into Resolume, Preferences, OSC. We have some options here, and you just have to, there's videos about this, but you just have to, in your settings, input those same kind of numbers and be on the same network, and you'll be able to form a connection between your phone and Resolume. And you can download the Touch OSC Editor app, which will allow you to create a custom interface. So I've got a slider and a button, and you can add all kinds. You can add knobs and different types of buttons and faders and everything, and create whatever kind of layout that you want. Then what you do is you go to Shortcuts, Edit OSC, and this is going to behave a little bit differently than the other ways of working. So you still have the highlighting, and let's say we want to map master opacity to our slider. Instead of clicking and jiggling the controller element that we want to control this, we're instead going to use this message. So Resolume already has preset addresses for each function inside of Resolume, and we just need to copy this, go into OSC Editor, and paste it into our message for that slider. And if we want to control our strobe, we can copy the message for its bypass button, click on our strobe button, paste that in, and in order to invert it, I've just changed our value range. Instead of 1 to 0, 0 to 1. So we could save that, we hit the sync button, and on our phone we just are going to go to Layout, Add, click our computer, sync it. Now we can stop our mapping. Now I can use my phone, activating the slider to control our master opacity, and hitting the button to activate the strobe. Alright, now you know the basics of setting up controllers inside of Resolume, so you can start button mashing like the best of us. Check out the rest of my tutorial series so you can learn more about how to set up your show file and create an incredible VJ performance in Resolume. Be sure to like, subscribe, and come back later for more videos. Thanks for watching. Peace.